What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back. And as always, thank you for joining me. My name's Paul Brettel. Today, we're here to discuss my instant takeaways from the Green Bay Packers win against the Carolina Panthers on Sunday. But first, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can find all my work over at Packers Wire, and you can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. So, like I said, and as we do, we are here to discuss my instant takeaways from the Green Bay Packers performance. I have this in article version over at Packers Wire, and these are just bullet points, quick hits, my gut reactions, instant takeaways, as the title suggests, of what I saw as the game unfolded. And then obviously, as the week goes on, we will dive deeper into a number of these topics, a few of which I've already done over at Packers Wire as well. But let's dive in. Let's start with Aaron Jones coming into this game. And in my three big things article, I wrote about this before the game, but it just very much felt like this was going to be an Aaron Jones performance, an Aaron Jones game where the Packers were going to lean on him and lean on the run game heavily. Reasons for that: one, Aaron Jones was at full capacity, a full go. He was off the injury report on Friday, did not have any injury designation going into this game. In addition to that, Packers are shorthanded at receiver. They entered the game without Christian Watson, without Jaden Reed, obviously have been without Luke Musgrave. And then as the game went on, they also were without Dontavian Wicks, who left with a chest injury. Thirdly, this is a Panthers run defense that has struggled this season. By DVOA, the run defense ranks 31st coming into this game. By expected points added against the run, they're the worst in football in that regard coming into this game as well. So you add all those pieces up, and it just felt again like this was going to be a game where Green Bay was going to rely on Aaron Jones, and they absolutely did. And right out the gate, I mean, he just set the tone for this one. I think he had a 10-yard rush on the first play. Packers come back with a very similar design on the second play of the game. He rushes it for 13 yards. So finished the game with 127 yards on the ground, average 6 yards per rush. And we all know it, and it's not just this season, but it's been during Aaron Jones' tenure here at the Green Bay Packers. But when he's on the field, this offense is just different. It is so much better. And Jordan Love briefly spoke about that after the game. I mean, there's the obvious that we see what Aaron Jones does with the ball in his hand, but when he's out there able to get, chunk runs on first, second down, keeping the offense ahead of the chains, out of third and long or third downs in general, that helps open up opportunities in the passing game. And I think we really saw that benefit this Packers offense, especially one that was shorthanded in the passing game. Next up, let's jump to the defensive side of the ball. The Panthers statistically came into this game one of the worst offenses in football. You wouldn't have known that by watching them and how they performed against the Green Bay Packers. But coming into the game, Bryce Young was averaging just 5.5 yards per pass attempt this season. That ranked 32nd in the NFL. He ended up finishing the day with 8.9, which for some context, over the course of the season would be the second highest rate in football, behind only the Miami Dolphins, I believe, is in first right now. The Panthers also hadn't scored as an offense more than 15 points in their last 8 games. They ended up dropping 30 on the Green Bay Packers, and Bryce Young came into the game having just one game where he had a passer rating over 100, obviously surpassed that in this one, and he had just 4 games this season where he had more than 200 passing yards total. Well, he threw for 312. I could keep going and nitpick and find other stats to compare where Young was coming into the game and what he did against the Green Bay Packers, but you get the idea. It was another poor performance from this Green Bay Packers defense overall, and Bryce Young continuing on like Baker Mayfield and Tommy DeVito before him. It was a career day for him. Again, by far his best performance in the NFL, and fortunately for the Packers, it didn't go to overtime with the Panthers running out of time at the end of the game. Where the defense did find a little bit of success was in the run game, and I wrote about this before the game as well. Chuba Hubbard, since the Panthers underwent that coaching change, they've been relying on the run game a lot more. Hubbard came into this one totaling near almost 300 yards rushing in his previous 3 games, was a big part of the offense. The Panthers were running the ball nearly 50% of the time over that 3-game span, but I give the Packers defense a little bit of credit. They did well in that regard, at least, holding Hubbard under 3 yards per carry. When the pass rush was able to get after Bryce Young, especially early on, they did disrupt him. You could tell that pressure was affecting him, speeding up his process, led to some inaccurate passes, missed some wide open pass catchers. But also as the game went on, Young really began to settle in, especially in that fourth quarter. I mean, prior to that final drive that, again, fortunately ended for the Packers with the clock running out, the Panthers had 3 straight touchdown drives, including 2 in the fourth quarter. So this performance by the Packers defense, to me, is far more disappointing. And I know it came in a win, but far more disappointing than the previous 2. And that's twofold. For one, it's the reasons already discussed and just where this Panthers offense was coming into this game. Again, statistically, pick any key category you like. Statistically, good chance they're one of the worst in football coming into this game. So that's one part. But the second part of it is that with Joe Barry and his back against the wall, and he admitted that. He was asked on Thursday, do you feel like your back's against the wall? And he responded, yes. So that's a situation he has found himself in. He can feel that heat as well. And knowing that that's the case, having a week to, hopefully better prepare your players. Matt LaFleur talked about on Monday how the emphasis was going to be on the communication aspect of it. Matt LaFleur was going to spend more time in the defensive meeting rooms this week. On Monday of last week, Matt LaFleur said that they had an open forum. Those were his words, open forum style meeting with the defensive side of the ball where everyone could speak up, could air their feelings, their frustrations, all of that stuff. So you have that situation that the Packers find themselves in, Barry up against the wall, these, steps that they took that they felt was going to help lead to a better performance. You take all of that against this Panthers team, and that's the performance we get from this unit. That was it. There was, this is a Panthers offense that doesn't have a Mike Evans. It doesn't have a Saquon Barkley like previous opponents. Like Bryce Young has been struggling, and the offensive line has given up the 4th most sacks. There aren't this, number of playmakers around him at the receiver position. And what did this Packers defense do in this game that was special? I mean, at least in the Buccaneers game, you can point to, well, they had 5 sacks, and when they did get after Baker Mayfield, they were able to slow him down or slow the Bucs offense down. But when we look at this Panthers game, I mean, they had 2 sacks, modest number. As I mentioned, they did hold Chuba Hubbard to under 3 yards per rush. There's something there, but they didn't generate any turnovers. Like I said already, the Panthers went down on their final 3 possessions and put up a touchdown. It was just a really, really discouraging and to a degree flat performance from this Packers team. Again, coming off the last 2 games they've had, the conversations that have been around this team, Barry with his back against the wall, like if all of that transpired over the last week doesn't, bring out, or help you at least get to take a step forward, seems some type of progression, again, especially against an offense that has struggled this season. I mean, when's it going to happen? Then the answer to that is it's not going to. So for those reasons, this was just a really, really discouraging performance from the Green Bay Packers defensive side of the ball. And if there's a time to move on for Joe Barry, that's already passed. This, even though they won the game, the opportunity is still there because of how they performed on Sunday, but there's nothing that's transpired, over the last week, this season, Barry's tenure here, that suggests that Matt LaFleur is going to make that move. Now, he still should. Again, the Packers are they're in the thick of the playoff chase right now. And we'll just bump this up. This is my last bullet point where they currently stand in the playoff race. But, Monday or next week against the Sunday night against the Minnesota Vikings is a de facto playoff game. The loser of that game, although I don't know if it'll be technically true, but very close to it, is going to be eliminated from playoff contention. And there is nothing that this defense has done to suggest that they're going to turn things around. In fact, for all the reasons I've already mentioned, they're probably not going to, because if you can't against Carolina in these circumstances, you're probably not going to at all. So the Packers are in playoff mode right now. They have to win out. They have to get some help. But again, what the current level that the defense is playing at is not going to give them that opportunity. The current level that this defense is playing at is going to get picked apart by Nick Mullins, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and that Vikings offense. Like, that's kind of the state of where things are right now. And there's been nothing that's taken place over the last three weeks to suggest that things are all of a sudden going to get better. Whether or not moving on from Joe Barry, putting Kirk Olivedati, the linebackers coach, and a defensive coordinator, whether that gives this team the spark, the juice that it needs, I don't know. That might do absolutely nothing. But you got to try something at this point. You're hanging on to your playoff lives. This defense, the coordinator has shown that they cannot get the job done. Something absolutely has to change. Again, we'll see whether or not that happens in the coming days or so, coming off of the performance that the Packers just had. Next up, let's jump to something at least a little more positive. The offensive side of the ball. Jordan Love, his overall numbers aren't going to leap off the page by any means, but this was another really all-around sound performance by him, especially without his top pass catchers. Already mentioned, no Christian Watson, no Jaden Reed, of course, no Luke Musgrave. Dontavian Wicks left before halftime, was out the entire second half. Even A.J. Dillon running the ball. You could tell that he was on a bit of a pitch count as he's still dealing with that broken thumb. However, Love was, for the most part, now there were a couple throws, and we can always nitpick. There were a couple throws where you could tell he was a little rushed, picked up his tempo, and led to some inaccurate passes. But for the most part, from start to finish, he was in command. He was in control of this offense, going through his progressions. Any pressure that was there, handled it well. And the fact that today's performance is a kind of a ho-hum one for Jordan Love, that just shows the growth that he's had, the growth that this offense has had. Because it's not very long ago where if the Packers were down those top, pass catchers, top playmakers within this offense, even going against a Carolina team, that game probably wouldn't have ended well for the offense. But they still put up 33 points. The offense as a whole averaged 5.9 yards per play. And again, if we take that out over the course of this season, see where that stands, that would be the second highest rate in football this season, just to provide some context around that number and how well the Packers were moving the ball. So another really, really encouraging performance from Jordan Love. And to top it off, led a game-winning drive. Packers kicked a field goal to give them the lead with 19 seconds left. And now that's the third time in the last 6 games that Jordan Love in the final 2 minutes has given this Green Bay Packers team the lead. He did it against the Chargers, did it against the Giants, and now he did it against Carolina as well. So if we want to talk about it's the holiday season, we want to talk about something positive, something to be excited about, it's Jordan Love and his play in this game. And again, the offense as a whole, despite just having the issues, or not the issues, but the injuries that they had to deal with throughout the course of the game. Next up, Green Bay special teams penalties. They had 2 more in this game, adding on to their league high. Anders Carlson, want to talk about him for a second, missed the extra point, but came through with some clutch field goal makes at the end. And I'm pretty sure I've talked about this on here before, but while we never quite know, what to expect for him when he goes on the field, he has shown us over and over and over again that he knows how to bounce back and has consistently done that all season long. I don't believe there's a game this season where he has missed two kicks in one game. And this goes back to, the evaluation process that Rich Bisaccia, the Packers front office, went through when evaluating Carlson coming out of Auburn. Bisaccia has referenced this a few times where it was his mental makeup is one of the things that really, really drew the Green Bay Packers to Carlson, again, during that pre-draft process. And that ability to bounce back, to not let a missed kick affect your next opportunity, that's what that is. That's mental toughness right there. And we've seen that from him over and over and over again. And that's a really, really good quality, really, really good trait to have in your kicker. Now, again, it's just about finding that consistency of it. But overall, despite the rocky start for him, a really, really strong finish from Anders Carlson. Anthony Johnson, he got the start at safety ahead of Rudy Ford, who was available. It looked like a bit of again, and this is all in the initial viewing, but it did look like a bit of a rough go for Anthony Johnson. Some missed tackles, plays where he was out of position, and this defense on the back end does miss Darnell Savage. And I know he's taken his lumps throughout his career during his time with the Packers. I think this year in particular, he's shown to be much more willing and capable against the run. His tackling, well, again, still some missed ones mixed in there, has improved this season. But I think where this Packers defense is really, really missing him is with that communication aspect of it. And that was a buzzword, something we heard a lot about over this last week. But go back to training camp. early in the season, whether it's Matt LaFleur, Ryan Downard, the safeties coach, when they're talking about Darnell Savage and what he brings to this team, it's that pre-snap communication. It's getting everyone, on the same page, understanding their responsibilities. And I think in these last few games with him sideline, that's an aspect that he brings to this defense that's really been missing. Couple more. I'll be curious to see the final snap counts for Sean Ryan and John Runyon, but it looked like for the second week in a row, Ryan was getting a much more equal mix with those snaps. So those two have been doing that rotation at right guard since week 9. That's nothing new. But up until the Bucks game, while that rotation was taking place, Ryan was seeing 1, maybe 2 series a game. Like Runyon was dominating it. But last week against the Bucks, it was close to a 50-50 split. And I don't know if it hit that mark, but there were, I think, 3 or 4 possessions that I could see where Ryan was on the field with the Green Bay Packers offense. So again, I think that snap count mix between the two is going to be a lot closer. And I had the opportunity to talk to Sean Ryan a few weeks ago and just asked him about that rotation. He said that it is challenging to, just kind of step onto the field. You go through your warm up, obviously, but just step on the field, thrown into the mix while the defensive front is warmed up. But he does think that as a whole, that rotation at guard and tackle has some benefits as well for the Packers offensive line, specifically just like a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman can get used to how a defender is pass rushing, how they're going about the run game, just how they go about things. It's the same thing for the other side. The defensive line, the edge rushers, they can get used to how a tackle or a guard is going to block them. And by switching it up in game does bring an added level. And again, it's not everything, it's a factor, but brings an added level of unpredictability for the Packers offense. And Matt LaFleur, Adam Stenavich have talked about it over and over. They love how the rotation has brought up the competition, and they think it's elevated the play of everyone on that offensive line as well. And you can't really argue with that. I mean, since they really started doing that week 9, week 10, this offensive line against the run or in the run game, in pass protection, has really been a lot better. And last thing I'll say about Ryan, I asked him, from year 1 to year 2, where's he seen the most growth? And for him, it's just the understanding and the execution of the playbook, and only knowing what his responsibilities are, but what the responsibilities are of everyone around him. And Aaron Rodgers has talked about this, during his time when he was with the Packers, how there's 2 playbooks. There's the one that's on paper, and then there's the one that's on the field. That takes place when you're on the football field in terms of, all right, how are the defenders going to attack you? What kind of looks are they going to give you that can affect how your responsibility plays out, how it can affect the responsibilities of everyone around you plays out. And it's that aspect of it, which a lot of times just come from experience, that is contributing to the elevated play that we're seeing from Sean Ryan this season. Last one, Green Bay entered the game, and I wrote about this beforehand at Packers Wire, struggling in the red zone. I mean, overall for the season, they've had some spurts of success, but overall they ranked 22nd in red zone success coming into this game in the last 2 games against Tampa and New York. While the defense, of course, has garnered the attention, the Packers' inability in the red zone in those games has contributed to those losses as well. They had 10 red zone visits between those 2 games, which is really, really good. Again, for some context, the Dallas Cowboys entered this week with 4.2 red zone attempts per game, leading the NFL. The Packers have been averaging 5 the last 2 weeks. The unfortunate part is that only 4 of those 10 trips resulted in a touchdown. But the Panthers offered them a get-right opportunity. Carolina came into the game allowing their opponents to score a red zone touchdown on 71% of their red zone visits, highest in the NFL. Packers ended this game going 3 for 4 in the red zone. And of course, in a 3-point game, that ended up playing a huge factor in determining the outcome. So good to see the Packers get back on the right track in that regard. And in terms of what's contributed to those past issues, it could be a variety of things, whether it was Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love, Elton Jenkins. All of them chalked it up to just a lack of execution in that part of the field. I think other contributors could be in not inconsistent, but in a run game that hasn't been overly effective either. That's a condensed part of the field. It's innately more difficult to move the ball through the air. It helps in inside the 20 when you have a run game to lean on. And I think having Aaron Jones playing like Aaron Jones in this Carolina game helped the Packers in that regard. I also do wonder, while they don't have necessarily a go-to option in the passing game, and that can benefit them elsewhere on the field. I've talked about it on here before. When Jordan Love can go 4 or 5 different places with the ball on any given play, that really stresses out a defense. But again, when you get down to the red zone, not having that go-to option, I think at times can be a factor that's hindered this offense as well. But nonetheless, against Carolina, they were 3 for 4, and that played a key part in the Green Bay Packers coming out with the win. So there you have it, my friends. Those are my instant takeaways, quick hits from the Packers' performance. As always, I appreciate you tuning in. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate it. As always, you can find all my work over at Packers Wire, and you can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. So until next time, friends, take care, stay safe, happy holidays, and go Pack Go.